There comes a moment in a woman's life when her spirit becomes too seasoned, her heart too wise, her soul too refined to tolerate what she once tolerated. There comes a sacred age, a victorious age, when she rises with a quiet power that can never again be broken. For many women, that age is 60, not because 60 is old, but because 60 is full of stories, full of lessons, full of healed wounds, full of rediscovered identity, full of the strength that only time can shape. At 60, a woman does not just live, she defines living. She does not just hope, she knows. She does not just survive, she stands. And in this standing, she realizes something deep, something holy. There are certain things she must never again accept from any man, not out of bitterness, not out of pride, not out of rebellion, but out of wisdom. Wisdom carved from storms she overcame, valleys she walked, and mountains she climbed with trembling hands but unwavering faith. A woman at 60 has outgrown disrespect because her life has been a long journey of becoming wiser, becoming stronger, becoming softer in the right places and unbreakable in others. When she reaches this age, she carries a level of experience that no book, no classroom, no mentor could have ever taught her. Life itself has been her most demanding teacher. The storms she endured, the sacrifices she made, the responsibilities she carried, and the heartbreak she survived have all shaped her into someone who understands her worth in a way she never did in her earlier years. She comes to a point where disrespect is no longer something she can tolerate, not because she is harsh or bitter, but because she has finally realized how precious her peace is and how sacred her self-value has become. Through her 20s, 30s, and even 40s, she may have endured situations where she was spoken to harshly or belittled because she believed in keeping the peace. She tolerated disrespect because she was busy raising children, supporting families, building homes, or trying to preserve relationships. She may have remained silent to avoid conflict. She may have forgiven more than necessary just to keep stability. She may have allowed others to take her voice, overlook her opinions, or ignore her emotions because she was expected to be strong. And yet, even then, she often blamed herself, thinking she wasn't doing enough or wasn't worthy enough to deserve better treatment. But time changes a woman. Life reshapes her soul. When she reaches 60, something shifts internally. She no longer seeks validation from anyone. She no longer fights to prove herself. She no longer allows people to diminish her. Instead, she learns that respect is not something she should beg for. It is something she must require. She understands that any man, whether he is her partner, her son, her brother, or even a friend, must speak to her with honor because she has earned that honor through years of sacrifice and suffering that most people will never fully understand. Disrespect at its root is an attack on a person's identity. It is not just about tone, it is about how someone values you. When a man disrespects a woman who is 60, he is not only disregarding her presence, he is disregarding her history. He is ignoring the decades she spent building her life, nurturing people, and growing through pain. He is ignoring the emotional battles she fought that no one knew about, and she realizes now more than ever that she cannot allow anyone to overlook the depth she carries. Disrespect steals her dignity, and she no longer negotiates her dignity for anyone. A woman at 60 becomes fully aware of what she brings into every room. She brings wisdom, she brings calmness, she brings understanding, she brings emotional strength, she brings discernment, she brings maturity, she brings peace. She does not enter someone's life as a burden, but as a blessing. So if a man cannot see her worth, she will not argue or explain. It is simply his loss, not her failure. She has learned that her energy is too valuable to spend trying to convince someone to treat her correctly. She also understands that disrespect can appear in many forms. It can be in the way someone talks down to her, dismisses her thoughts, mocks her age, ignores her feelings, or assumes she is no longer relevant. The world sometimes treats older women as though they have passed their prime. But she knows something the world doesn't. Her prime is not defined by youth, but by wisdom. Her value is not measured by appearance, but by experience. Her identity is not rooted in what she used to be, but in what she has become. Therefore, she refuses to stay in any environment where her voice is silenced. If a man cannot listen to her with respect, she simply withdraws. If he cannot speak to her with kindness, she no longer entertains the conversation. If he cannot value her contributions, she knows she deserves better. She no longer just walks away from disrespect. She rises above it. Her confidence is quiet. Her strength is calm. And her boundaries are firm because she has finally honored the truth about herself. She deserves respect not because of her age, but because of her worth. What makes her powerful now is that she is not angry. She is aware. She is not defensive. She is discerning. She is not confrontational. She is confident. She knows that a man who truly understands the weight of her journey will handle her with gentleness. She knows that a man who sees her worth will honor her naturally. She knows that a man who values her presence will never belittle her. And she refuses to settle for anything less because she has reached a point where peace matters more than companionship and dignity matters more than approval. A woman at 60 has lived enough life to understand that disrespect is not love. Disrespect is not care. Disrespect is not misunderstanding. Disrespect is a choice. And she now has the courage to choose herself every time. She no longer stays silent. She no longer accepts crumbs, and she no longer allows anyone to diminish her presence. Instead, she walks in a strength that whispers, I know who I am, and I will never again accept anything that tries to shrink me. A woman who has crossed 60 has spent the majority of her life giving, serving, sacrificing, and carrying responsibilities that others often overlooked. For decades, she has been the one people depended on, whether it was raising children, holding a family together, supporting a partner, managing a household, or being the emotional anchor for everyone around her. Through all these years, she became so used to giving that many people simply assumed her support would always be there. They didn't ask, they expected. They didn't appreciate, they consumed. And without realizing it, she became someone others took for granted. But when she reaches 60, something within her finally awakens, a realization that she has given enough without being seen, and she must never again accept being taken for granted by any man. Being taken for granted is not always loud or obvious. It is often silent, subtle, and emotional. It's when someone assumes she'll always say yes because she always has. It's when her efforts are accepted but not acknowledged. It's when her love is received but not reciprocated. It's when her presence is convenient but never cherished. Over the years, she may have been the one who remembered every birthday, every detail, every need. She may have been the one who cooked, cleaned, managed finances, listened to problems, comforted pain, and held everything together. But rarely did anyone pause and ask, who is holding her? Who is caring for her? Who is thanking her? She kept going, not for praise, but out of love. She kept giving because she felt responsible. She kept offering because she was nurturing. She kept supporting because her heart is naturally generous. But somewhere along that path, she lost herself in the needs of others. People became so accustomed to her strength that they forgot she too needed strength. They became accustomed to her stability, forgetting she too needed support. And they began to assume she would always be there, available, ready, no matter how drained she was. But reaching age 60 marks a turning point. It is a sacred threshold. It is the moment she begins to reclaim what she lost along the way. Her voice, her boundaries, her value. She begins to understand that being taken for granted is not harmless. It is a form of emotional neglect. It makes her feel unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. And she realizes she cannot allow, tolerate, or excuse such treatment anymore, especially from any man, because men have often been the ones she catered to the most throughout her life. A man may take her for granted in many ways, expecting her to do everything without asking, failing to appreciate her efforts, ignoring her emotions, or assuming her life should revolve around his needs. He may think she is strong enough to handle anything and therefore forgets she also needs tenderness. He may rely on her stability but offer none in return. He may benefit from her presence but never express gratitude for it. But once she reaches this stage in life, she becomes deeply aware of how damaging such dynamics are to her spirit. She understands now that she deserves effort, not excuses, appreciation, not assumptions, reciprocity, not one-sided sacrifice. She deserves someone who notices the small things she does, someone who values her consistency, someone who thanks her without her having to ask, someone who sees the years she has poured into others and chooses to pour back into her. She is no longer willing to give to a man who only knows how to receive. She is no longer willing to invest in a man who treats her love like a service. She is no longer willing to be the emotional foundation for someone who doesn't support her emotionally in return. The beautiful thing is that she doesn't demand grand gestures or extravagant displays of affection. She simply wants acknowledgement, humility, appreciation, thoughtfulness. She wants someone who understands that her giving heart is not an obligation, but a gift that deserves to be respected, a gift that deserves to be cherished, a gift that should never be exploited. And now at 60, she is wise enough to walk away from any man who continues to take her presence for granted. She no longer explains her boundaries. She no longer argues for her worth. She no longer stays in a place where her value is ignored. Instead, she chooses environments that honor her, relationships that appreciate her, and people who recognize the depth of her contribution. She also realizes something powerful. Being taken for granted does not mean she wasn't worthy. It means the other person lacked vision. They could not see the treasure before them. They could not recognize the blessing in her presence. They could not understand the beauty of her loyalty, the depth of her patience, or the strength of her love. But their blindness is not her burden. It is simply a sign that she must step away to protect her peace. A woman at 60 does not need loud apologies or dramatic changes. She simply needs consistent gratitude. And if a man cannot offer that, she no longer offers him access to her heart. She has learned, sometimes the hard way, that being underestimated is painful, but being taken for granted is dangerous. It slowly erodes the soul. But she has also learned that she has the authority to stop it, the strength to walk away, and the wisdom to choose better. So she refuses to accept a life where her efforts are invisible. She refuses to continue pouring into people who do not pour back into her. She refuses to waste her remaining years in places that don't honor her presence. And with a calm but unshakable strength, she steps into a version of herself that finally understands this truth. She is not responsible for teaching anyone how to appreciate her. It is their responsibility to recognize her worth on their own. If they cannot see it, they are not meant to stay. A woman who has reached 60 has lived long enough to understand the weight of truth and the damage of deceit. She has experienced relationships, friendships, disappointments, betrayals, reconciliations, and heartbreaks that have shaped her into someone who values honesty more than anything superficial. Lies once confused her, derailed her, hurt her, or made her question her own intuition. But at this stage in her life, truth has become her clearest guide, her most trusted companion, and her deepest form of peace. Now, she refuses to accept lies from any man, not out of anger, but out of wisdom, because she knows that every lie, no matter how small, carries the power to poison the heart and disturb the soul. Throughout her earlier years, she may have tolerated dishonesty because she believed people would change. She may have given chance after chance, hoping that the truth would eventually surface. She may have accepted excuses, forced herself to believe stories that didn't make sense, or silenced her suspicions for the sake of keeping peace. She may have loved someone so deeply that she ignored the red flags in front of her. She may have wanted the relationship to work so badly that she tolerated what she should have walked away from. But these experiences taught her a difficult and powerful lesson. Lies don't protect love. They destroy it. When a man lies, he is not just hiding information, he is hiding his character. Dishonesty is not a mistake, it is a mindset. It shows how little he respects her intelligence, her trust, and her emotional well-being. A woman at 60 understands this with clarity now. She knows that trust is the foundation of any bond, whether it is romantic, familial, or personal. Without trust, everything else becomes unstable. Without truth, there can be no peace. Without honesty, there can be no real relationship. She has become intuitive over the years. She can sense when someone is not genuine. She can feel when someone's words and actions do not match. She can hear the hesitation in their voice, see the inconsistency in their behavior, and detect the tone of uncertainty that comes with deceit. She no longer doubts her instincts because life has taught her that her intuition has always been her quiet protector. And when a lie appears, she no longer fights to unravel it. She simply steps back, observes, and makes decisions rooted in self-respect. A woman at this stage of life is not impressed by sweet words or empty promises. She is moved only by authenticity. She does not want elaborate explanations or dramatic apologies. She wants honesty, raw, simple, consistent truth. Because truth brings clarity, and clarity brings peace. And peace is something she values more than approval or companionship. One of the reasons she rejects lies so firmly now is because she understands the emotional cost of being deceived. Lies create anxiety. Lies create overthinking. Lies create sleepless nights. Lies create emotional instability. Lies make her question her worth, her judgment, and even her reality. She has endured enough emotional storms in her life to know that she will not willingly step into another one created by someone's dishonesty. She has no interest in living in confusion or doubt when she has fought so hard to build inner certainty. She also knows that a man who lies does not lie because he must. He lies because he chooses to. And if he chooses deceit over transparency, then he is not a man aligned with her spirit. A man who respects her will not lie to her. A man who values her will not hide things from her. A man who loves her will not confuse her heart with deception. She deserves someone who brings clarity, not chaos, understanding, not uncertainty, truth, not turmoil. It is not that she is unforgiving. She forgives more deeply than most. But forgiveness does not mean tolerance. She can forgive a lie without accepting a liar. She can release the pain without allowing it back into her life. Her boundaries at this age are not walls, they are gates. Gates that open only for honesty, integrity, and maturity. She knows now that truth is not just about what is spoken, it is about what is lived. She watches actions more than words. She observes patterns more than promises. She looks at consistency, not just confession. She understands that real honesty is shown, not told. And because she has seen enough in life, she no longer falls for superficial charm. She looks deeper into character, actions, reliability, sincerity. This is why she refuses to accept lies from any man, no matter his role in her life. If he is her partner, she expects loyalty. If he is a friend, she expects transparency. If he is a son, she expects sincerity. If he is a brother, she expects truthfulness. Her heart has become too seasoned, too healed, too at peace to allow deceit back into her world. At this stage in her life, she understands that the truth may hurt, but lies destroy. The truth may challenge her, but lies break her. The truth may be uncomfortable, but lies create lasting wounds. So she chooses truth every time, even if it is difficult, because honesty allows her to build real connections. And real connections are the only ones she is willing to invest in now. She also knows that time is precious. She does not have years to waste on someone who cannot be straightforward. She will not spend her remaining decades trying to decode someone's behavior or decipher their motives. She values simplicity, emotional clarity, and genuine intentions. A man who lies costs her peace, and peace is something she refuses to sacrifice again. So now she protects her spirit with boundaries built from experience. She refuses to let deceit enter her life because she knows her worth too deeply and her peace too fiercely to let dishonesty steal either. And with quiet strength, she stands firm in this truth. A woman who has lived through decades of hardship will never again allow a man's lies to undo the wisdom she fought so hard to gain. A woman who has lived 60 years understands the deep human need for emotional connection more clearly than ever. She has spent decades nurturing others, children, partners, family members, friends, often putting her own emotions aside so she could be strong for everyone else. She knows what it feels like to carry the weight of others' feelings while her own heart goes unheard. She has learned that emotional neglect is not silence, it is starvation. It is the slow fading of the soul when someone who claims to care about you treats your feelings as unimportant, and after everything she has lived through, she refuses to accept emotional neglect from any man because she knows her heart has value, and she knows her emotions matter. In her younger years, she may have tolerated emotional distance because she believed things would change. She may have stayed quiet when her needs weren't met, thinking she was asking for too much. She may have convinced herself to be patient, to be understanding, to give more time, to wait for him to open up someday. She may have told herself that love means staying, even when she felt alone in the relationship. But now at 60, she recognizes that emotional neglect is not something she deserves, and it is not something she can continue to live with. She realizes that love without emotional presence is not love. It is duty, convenience, or habit. She wants love that listens, not love that silences her. A man who is emotionally unavailable often gives the illusion of connection without the substance. He may be physically present but emotionally absent. He may sit in the same room but never truly hear her. He may speak words but never connect to her heart. He may expect her to understand him without ever trying to understand her. But a woman at 60 no longer accepts this imbalance. She has spent too many years giving emotional energy to people who did not give it back. She has cried quietly, loved loudly, and endured lonely nights even in the presence of someone who didn't truly see her. She now understands the cost of staying with someone who leaves her feeling unseen. She also knows that emotional neglect comes in many forms. It can be the man who dismisses her feelings by calling them exaggerated overreactions or too sensitive. It can be the man who never asks about her day or her dreams because he assumes she no longer has any. It can be the man who stops giving affection, stops communicating, stops connecting, but expects her to remain loyal, loving, and available. It can be the man who takes her presence for granted, assuming her emotional strength means she doesn't need tenderness. But she does. She always has. And she finally understands that needing emotional closeness does not make her needy. It makes her human. A woman at 60 craves not just companionship, but connection. She wants conversations that matter, not just small talk. She wants a man who asks how she feels, not just what she did that day. She wants someone who listens without interrupting, someone who cares without being pressured, someone who holds her not because she feels weak, but because he cherishes her presence. She has learned that emotional intimacy is one of the deepest forms of love, and she refuses to live without it. Her heart has stretched for decades. She has poured love into people who didn't always appreciate its depth. She has been the safe place for others, the comforter, the caretaker, the emotional backbone during crises. But now she seeks someone who can also be a safe place for her, someone who doesn't run from her emotions but welcomes them, someone who sees her heart not as a burden but as a treasure. What makes her strong now is not that she needs less love, but that she no longer settles for shallow love. She values the kind of emotional presence that shows up consistently, not only when it's convenient. She wants the kind of partnership where vulnerability flows both ways, not just from her. She wants a man who understands that emotional connection is not optional. It is essential. It is the glue that holds a relationship together. Without it, the relationship becomes nothing more than routine. She also knows that emotional neglect slowly kills hope. It makes a woman doubt whether she is worthy of affection. It makes her question her own desires. It makes her feel invisible. And she has fought too hard to rediscover her worth to let anyone take that away again. She understands now that her emotional needs are valid, her feelings are real, and her heart deserves respect. At this age, she would rather be alone than be with a man who makes her feel lonely. She would rather have peace than forced affection. She would rather protect her heart than give it to someone who doesn't know how to hold it. She would rather walk alone with dignity than stay in a relationship where she feels emotionally abandoned. She no longer tolerates the man who shuts down every time she expresses a concern, who avoids emotional conversations, who prioritizes everything except her heart. She no longer plays the role of emotional caretaker to a man who refuses to meet her halfway. She no longer sacrifices her inner peace for the sake of maintaining a relationship that isn't feeding her soul. What she wants now is simple but profound presence. She wants a man who shows up with his heart, not just his body. A man who gives affection, not excuses. A man who understands her silence, not one who ignores it. A man who communicates honestly, not one who hides behind walls. A man who values her emotions because he values her. She knows her worth too deeply to settle for emotional crumbs. She is too wise to confuse silence with peace. And she is too experienced to pretend that emotional neglect is something she must endure. Her heart is still capable of loving deeply, but she will now love herself first. And loving herself means no longer accepting anyone who neglects her emotionally. Her spirit has grown, her boundaries have strengthened, and her heart has healed enough to choose connection over emptiness every single time. A woman who has crossed 60 rejects the idea of being finished because she has reached a place where she finally understands the truth about herself. Her worth is not defined by age. Her relevance is not determined by anyone else's opinion, and her journey is far from over. In fact, this stage of her life often becomes the most powerful, the most authentic, and the most liberating chapter she has ever lived. She has already walked through decades of challenges, raising families, building careers, nurturing relationships, surviving heartbreak, enduring losses, and overcoming seasons that would have destroyed a weaker person. Every year strengthened her, every experience shaped her, and every trial refined her. Now, at 60 and beyond, she sees life with clarity that younger versions of her never had. She has discovered that growth doesn't have an expiration date, and she refuses to let anyone treat her as if her purpose has run out. She knows too much, has seen too much, and has endured too much to let someone else define the timeline of her greatness. For years, society has tried to convince women that after a certain age, their beauty fades, their relevance shrinks, and their opportunities decline. But a woman at 60 knows this is one of the biggest lies she was ever told. She realizes now that beauty is deeper than skin. Relevance flows from wisdom, and opportunities still appear for those who have the courage to embrace them. She is not who she was at 20, 30, or even 50, and she doesn't want to be. She has grown through lessons that only life can teach. She has lost people she never thought she could live without, but she survived. She has rebuilt herself after heartbreaks she thought would break her forever, but they didn't. She has stood alone in seasons when she had no one to lean on, and she learned that she is strong, capable, and resilient. So why would she ever accept a man or anyone who tells her that she is done evolving? She refuses to be surrounded by voices that limit her. She won't listen to people who see her age as a decline instead of a different kind of rise. She has reached a chapter where confidence comes from wisdom, not appearance, where purpose comes from clarity, not pressure, where power comes from experience, not approval. A woman after 60 knows that she still has dreams. She still has things she wants to build, places she wants to see, and goals she wants to pursue. Even if her path looks different than before, it is still sacred, still meaningful, still hers. She understands now that the biggest mistake she could make is allowing someone to treat her as though she is done growing. She is still unfolding, still discovering new passions, still rewriting her story, and she will not spend her time around men who try to shrink her potential. She has given too much of her life to serving, supporting, and sacrificing for others. This chapter is hers, full of wisdom, peace, maturity, and strength. She wants a man who sees her not as someone reaching the end, but someone entering a new beginning, a man who appreciates her depth instead of trying to control it, a man who values her wisdom instead of being intimidated by it, a man who understands that her age doesn't make her less desirable, but more resilient, more self-aware, more grounded, more graceful. She refuses to allow any man to reduce her existence to numbers, wrinkles, or stereotypes. Her worth is not measured by how youthful she appears, but by how powerful she has become. She has seen enough life to know that seasons change, but purpose remains. She knows that time does not diminish her value, it reveals it. She understands that life after 60 is not a downward slope, it is a new horizon, and she is determined to walk toward it with dignity, joy, and courage. So if a man tries to treat her as though she is finished, she will walk away without hesitation. She will not argue. She will not convince him otherwise. She knows who she is, and she knows her story is still unfolding. She embraces her age with pride because she carries the kind of confidence that comes from living, not pretending. She is not done. She is not declining. She is not slowing down. She is stepping into a chapter where she is freer than ever, bolder than ever, and more herself than ever. And no man has the right to tell her otherwise. A woman after 60 understands love with a depth that younger hearts cannot comprehend. She has walked through enough relationships, enough seasons, and enough emotional battles to know exactly what real love feels like and what it absolutely is not. That wisdom becomes her filter. It becomes the standard she carries into every interaction, every connection, and every relationship. At this point in her life, she is done guessing, done settling, done hoping someone will eventually appreciate her. She has learned through experience that love is not meant to confuse her, drain her, or make her question her worth. Love should strengthen her, not weaken her. It should add to her life, not take away from it. She no longer chases butterflies, she seeks peace. She no longer wants the thrill of unpredictability. She wants the steady presence of someone who knows how to love with maturity. And because she understands this so clearly, she refuses to accept anything less. Over the years, she has learned that loyalty is not a luxury. It is a requirement. She has been in situations where she gave her all only to receive half-hearted effort in return. She has experienced the pain of people who said one thing but lived another. She has carried the weight of relationships where she was loyal to someone who wasn't loyal to her. Those wounds taught her a powerful truth. Love without loyalty is just emotional noise, a distraction that looks like connection but leaves you empty. So now she waits for the kind of love that is consistent, not conditional. She wants a man who shows up, not just speaks promises. She wants someone whose actions don't contradict his words. She values commitment because she knows the cost of inconsistency, and she knows that if a man cannot stand beside her with loyalty, then he is not worthy of standing beside her at all. She also understands that kindness is not optional. She has lived through decades of giving, nurturing, and pouring into others. She has been the comforter, the peacemaker, the protector, the one who offered compassion even when she didn't receive it in return. So now she expects a man who brings kindness to her table, not one who takes advantage of hers. She refuses to tolerate a man who belittles her, dismisses her, or makes her feel small. She doesn't have the energy for ego battles or emotional immaturity. She wants gentleness, not sarcasm, disguised as humor. She wants understanding, not defensiveness. She wants a man who speaks life into her, not one who drains it out of her. She understands now that a soft heart is not a weakness. It is a strength few people truly possess, and she will only align herself with someone who treats her heart with the respect and tenderness it deserves. She has also learned that emotional intimacy matters far more than physical attraction. A woman after 60 can easily see beyond appearances. She has lived long enough to know that good looks fade, charm evaporates, and excitement fades, but character remains. She desires a connection built on truth, trust, and courage. She wants a man who can sit with her in silent moments and still feel connected. A man who listens deeply, not just to respond. A man who values vulnerability instead of hiding behind pride. She understands that emotional intimacy requires honesty, patience, and humility, and she will not connect herself to someone who lacks these qualities. She has seen what surface-level relationships produce, and she has no intention of wasting this stage of her life on emptiness, wrapped in pretty packaging. Her maturity demands depth. It demands a relationship where two souls meet, not just two bodies or two routines. She doesn't want a man who tries to control her or shape her into something smaller. She wants a partner, not a boss. She wants a companion, not a supervisor. She wants a man who respects her independence, but still chooses to walk beside her. And because she knows the difference between love and attachment, she will not allow loneliness to push her into accepting anything less. She no longer fears being alone. She fears being with someone who makes her feel alone. She values her own peace too much to settle for anything shallow or unstable. This newfound clarity is not arrogance, it's wisdom, hard-earned, deeply understood, and fully embraced wisdom. A woman after 60 knows the true weight of love. She knows the power of loyalty, the beauty of kindness, the necessity of respect, and the irreplaceable value of emotional connection. She is not looking for perfection. She is looking for sincerity. She is not asking for everything. She just refuses to accept nothing. She will not settle for half love, half effort, or half presence. Her maturity built her standards. Her experiences shaped her expectations, and her wisdom protects her heart. And any man who cannot meet her where she stands, emotionally, spiritually, and respectfully, will not walk with her into this powerful chapter of her life. A woman after 60 understands something that takes many people a lifetime to learn. Peace is priceless. She has reached a point where she no longer measures her life by how many people she can please, how much noise she can tolerate, or how many problems she can absorb. She measures her life by the quality of her days, the calm in her heart, and the simplicity of her surroundings. Peace is no longer a luxury for her. It is a necessity. It is the foundation on which she builds every decision, every relationship, and every step forward. She has lived through the weight of chaos, through the noise of other people's expectations, and through the burden of being everything for everyone. Now, she protects her peace with strength that surprises even her. She has learned that any man who cannot contribute to her peace cannot be part of her life. In her earlier years, she tolerated things she should have walked away from. Arguments that drained her, relationships that confused her, men who took advantage of her patience, situations that robbed her of sleep, dignity and joy. She tolerated disrespect because she thought love would fix it. She tolerated neglect because she hoped things would change. She tolerated lies because she believed in second chances. But age brought wisdom, and wisdom taught her that peace is more valuable than proximity, that quiet is more healing than chaos, that walking away is sometimes the most loving thing she can do for herself. So now she chooses peace over attention, peace over companionship, and peace over a relationship that demands she abandon herself to keep someone else happy. A woman after 60 knows that her emotional well-being is her responsibility. She knows she can no longer afford to let anyone disrupt the life she has worked so hard to build. She spent years building others. Now she builds herself. She spent years fixing people. Now she protects her heart. She spent years sacrificing her happiness. Now she honors it. She refuses to let any man walk into her life and bring storms she already survived. She is not impressed by charm, smooth words, or temporary affection. She is drawn to stability, maturity, and peace. She wants someone whose presence feels calm, not chaotic, someone who speaks gently, who listens deeply, and who understands the value of emotional safety. She will not argue with a man who cannot communicate. She will not chase a man who cannot choose her. She will not entertain a man who drains her energy and disturbs her spirit. She has reached the stage where silence feels better than forced conversation, and solitude feels better than companionship that cost her peace. This does not mean she is cold or distant. It means she finally honors herself. It means she understands her boundaries, her worth, and her emotional limits. It means she knows what it feels like to carry too much and receive too little. It means she chooses soft, not stressful. She chooses steady, not unpredictable. She chooses joy, not drama. Peace has become her protection, her guide, and her standard. She will welcome a man into her life only if he brings peace with him. If he brings confusion, she closes the door. If he brings inconsistency, she steps back. If he brings disrespect, she walks away. She has no fear of being alone because solitude has taught her more about herself than any relationship ever did. She knows that loneliness is not the absence of people. It's the presence of the wrong person. A woman after 60 prioritizes peace because she finally understands that her soul deserves rest, not war. Her heart deserves love, not chaos. Her mind deserves clarity, not anxiety. She has lived enough to know that life is too short to spend it with someone who steals her joy rather than adding to it. She is not seeking perfection. She is seeking peace, respect, truth, and emotional safety. She wants a partner who walks beside her, not in front of her. Someone who supports her goals, not belittles them. Someone who values her wisdom, not competes with it. Her peace is sacred, and any man who disturbs it loses his place in her life without explanation or apology. She will walk away quietly, gracefully, and confidently, not because she is unloving, but because she finally loves herself enough to protect her peace. And that is the greatest wisdom a woman at her stage can hold. The courage to choose what feels right over what looks good, the strength to prioritize her soul, and the clarity to never again let anyone cost her the peace she fought so hard to find. If this message touched your heart today, don't forget, your peace, your voice, your worth matter more than anything. You deserve a life filled with calm, respect, and love that honors your soul. If this sermon blessed you, inspired you, or opened your eyes, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs this message today. Your support helps us reach more hearts, more homes, and more lives. Stay encouraged, stay empowered, and stay connected. Your best chapter is still unfolding.